Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to begin the funeral service of Mrs. Lois Israel. Rabbi Brian Immerman will be officiating. We welcome those of you who are joining us via live stream. And for those of you who are here, please take a moment to be sure your cell phones have been turned off, not to disturb the sacred funeral ceremony. At this time, we're going to begin.
We begin with Psalm 16. Shiviti Adonai l'negdi tamid ki mimini ba'alei mot, l'chen sameach libi v'yalgel kavodi, af b'sari yishkon levetach. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side, I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult and my soul rejoice. My being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful one see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. Good morning to our dear family and friends. My condolences as we mourn our mother, our wife, our sister, our grandmother, our aunt, and our friend, Lois Israel. Our friends are grieving in their darkened world, and in their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in the sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Lois's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For her companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give thanks to our God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures. They bring us the ever-new message of God's nearness. They speak of our kinship with the Creator in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. The Torah portion that we are reading this morning is Chaye Sarah, which means the life of Sarah. One of the reasons that I thought to include this morning is you kept talking about Lois's laughter when we met. And what does Sarah do when she learns that she's going to become pregnant in old age? Is she laughs. And so we can all take a moment and think about Lois's laughter resonating through our hearts and minds this morning. The portion begins, and the life of Sarah was 107 and 20 years. These were the lives of Sarah. And she died in Kiryat Arba in Hebron, the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah, just like we have come to mourn this morning. And this portion, which tells the death of Sarah, begins its narration with a recounting of the life of our matriarch. From this, our sages taught that the truly righteous never die. They live on in their deeds and in the hearts and memories of those who love them. They serve as examples for us to emulate. Their lives give us direction and purpose as we strive to find meaning on our own journeys. And so as we continue to emulate the laughter, the good deeds of Lois, her memory will live on in our hearts. We continue with Psalm 23. Adonai roi lo achsar binodeshe yarbitzeni al meimenechot yanchaleni, nafshia shovev yancheni b'magle tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki elach begeit salmavet lo ira ra ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha heme yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged zorarai. Dishanta b'shemen roshi kosi ravaya. Ach tov v'chesed yudafuni kol yimei chayai. V'shavti b'veit Adonai v'orech yamim. I invite you to join me in the English in your packets. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for the sake of his name. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and the staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In this moment of unexplained grief, there are no words, of course, to bring us the ultimate comfort. There is something lost, and we are filled with many questions as to why we are here on this particular morning, a life seemingly cut short. And as we think about how we continue, how we go on, we look at Psalm 23 for guidance, that it says, we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, ki ata imadi, for you are with me. And we walk through this valley of grief, not alone, but together, both with God's help, but with family and all of our friends and community who help usher us along the way, to support us when we feel like we have fallen, to make sure that we enter and are able to see the light on the other side. In Psalm 121, we read, Esa einai hehari me'ain yavo Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and coming, now and forever. And in Ecclesiastes, we are reminded, L'kol zman ve'et l'kol chefetz tachat hashemayim. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to grieve and a time to dance. A time to throw stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to discard. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. Our poet writes that birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. In his sorrow, Job, our eternal suffering servant, cried out, Adonai natan va'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away, blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and with that valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, and yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, that there is strength in faith. With Job, we say, Adonai natan, God, you have given. You gave us, Lois, a loving wife and sister and mother and grandmother and aunt and friend, and she will never be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in her life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. And then we say, Adonai lakach, God, you have taken away. And we pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love. We join with Job and say, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. Blessed be the name of God, now and forever. We take a moment for our own silent prayers. Yira l'ratzoni mrefi v'hegion libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri v'goali. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. I would now like to invite Cyril to offer some words in memory of your sister.
It was very difficult to witness what Lois went through over the past 4 months. I tried with all my heart and soul to bring some comfort to her as she fought with such dignity and kindness to others while facing her own suffering. She was my big sister who I always looked up to as a superb example in every way. Watching her go through life cycles and passages, I learned what awaited me in the future. There was a large gap in our ages. She was 4.5 years older and 5 years ahead in school. In childhood, our relationship was shaped by those differences. You see, I was too young to partake in all the things she was interested and involved in, so I just observed and learned. Growing up, we always shared a bedroom. One of my earliest memories of my childhood is me being in my crib, peering out of the bars and watching and waiting for Lo to awaken. But you know, she always loved her sleep. In later years at night, we would have many conversations, sharing our inner thoughts and wishes. Of course, scratching each other's backs was part of a goodnight ritual. As the oldest, she received the scratching first, though many times to my dismay, she told me she was too tired to reciprocate. I guess just sibling stuff, what can I say? I'd see her through the years developing many talents, dancing, cheerleading, to name a few. As she would cartwheel from one end of our apartment to the other with perfect precision and form, I admired her skill, but never could replicate it. I remember all the Saturday mornings we shared, watching cartoons, eating Shabbat dinner leftovers, and witnessing Lois play solitaire for hours on the living room floor. That was our glimpse into the future for her love and expertise of canasta, the game she loved to play. She also loved being with our cousins when we would meet for family get-togethers, especially when our younger girl cousins got together. We took dance classes, we made up plays, we did the popular dances of the day like the Monster Mash, Jitterbug, and Twist, or just talked about boys. Another memory is when she was in high school and I was still in grammar school. As the annoying little sister, I tried to listen to all her phone call conversations, but she'd lock me out of the bedroom. So unbeknownst to her, I would lay on the floor, listen through the crack at the bottom of the door, and spy on her. Our relationship changed as we both grew older. It was in my teenage years that our age gap melted away. You see, Lois had met the man of her dreams, Elliot, and I was the maid of honor at their wedding. Our unbreakable bond was forged as she and Elle had their children, Alan, Eric, and David. I loved watching her be the best wife and mother, a great mother-in-law to Marnie and Amy, and an amazing grandmother to Hannah, Ben, Charlie, Jackson, Hattie. Lois and Elliot helped to raise Hannah in their home, and that was truly a selfless act. Throughout the years, we shared so many of life's ups and downs. We guided, supported, and loved each other through it all. We always sang this song together. Sisters, sisters, there were never such devoted sisters. That song was made popular by Rosemary Clooney in the movie White Christmas, so it's apparent that Lois got the singing voice in our family. Even recently, while in the hospital, she and I would sing it to each other because, you see, we were devoted to each other. Lois, our mother, and I were a trio, a force of femininity, just loving hanging out with each other. Our moments spent shopping, traveling, talking, and gambling on Grandma's insistence. Those were special and unique moments for us. Lois was an incredible daughter to both our mother, Bernice, and Carl, her father, our father, always making them proud. You You see, she was a pleaser and a do-gooder. Lois had so many close friends throughout the years, still remaining close with many childhood friends, while accumulating so many others through all aspects of her later life, teaching dance aerobics, choreographing school plays, performing in community theater, involved in a singing group that entertained the elderly, enjoying theater in Chicago or on Broadway, or just being a great neighbor. She was always willing to lend an ear, express her views in a non-judgmental way, but always with an open heart. But it is with sadness and a deeply broken heart that I say, rest in peace, dear Lois. You were taken way too soon.
Thank you, Cyril. We now invite Eric to offer some words.
Lois Kurtzman, Lois Israel, Aunt Lois, Mimi, Mom. My mom cared deeply about two things, her family and her friends. Nothing was more important to her. She didn't care about money or material things. She wasn't overly interested in status or politics. She cared about her people. She deeply loved her mom and dad, Grandma Bee, and Grandpa Carl, and her father-in-law, Papa Milt. She loved her sister Cyril and Cyril's entire family. She loved Uncle Mark and Uncle Lee and their entire families. She loved her aunts, uncles, and dozens of cousins. She loved her boys, Alan, David, and me. She adored her grandchildren, Hannah, Ben, Charlie, Hattie, and Jax. She loved her daughters-in-law, Marnie and Amy. She cherished her dear friends, who are too numerous to name, but you know who you are. Most of all, she loved and was in love with Poppy, her husband of more than a half a century. My mom and dad had a true old-fashioned love story. You don't really see it as often these days. They were inseparable for 55-plus years. As my mom's hips and back began to limit her mobility and cause her serious pain over the past decade, my dad was there for her in every way possible. My mom took care of my dad and our entire family during the first 45 years of their marriage, and my dad took care of my mom during these last 10 years. Sorry. While my mom was rehabbing from surgery at Whitehall, both she and my dad got COVID. He wasn't permitted to visit her for 10 days, but that didn't stop him. He would go and he would sit outside the window of her room just so that she knew she wasn't alone. She was never alone. My dad was always there. There was nothing my mom enjoyed more than a Saturday or Sunday at the house with the entire family there, talking, laughing, arguing, but mostly just being together. My mom had a quick wit and enjoyed all the banter between her grandkids and kids. She would slyly giggle at our inappropriate internal family jokes. Anyone that has been to our house can hear my mom's voice saying, "Elliot," in her loud, loving, distinctive voice. She never missed a birthday, anniversary, or special day, any reason to get together and celebrate anyone. She was the first to be there. She would schlep downtown to attend events at Ben's school, and even just this summer, as she awaited her surgery, she trekked to a tennis match to watch Ben compete. Mimi made her grandkids feel important and loved. After growing up in a house full of amazing women, her mother, Grandma Bee, and her sister, Aunt Cyril, my mom would become the only woman in a house full of men. Even all of our pets were boys. While she certainly loved her boys, she sometimes commented about what it would have been like to have a daughter, to share in some of the things she enjoyed most, theater, dance, music. Well, later in life, she experienced that. Hannah was as much a daughter to my mom as she was a granddaughter. Their relationship has always been very special and remained that way through my mom's last moments. My mom enjoyed reminiscing about favorite family trips to Israel and Palm Springs and her and Poppy's trips to Michigan to stay with their dear friends, Barb and Fred. After an agonizing and grossly unfair 4 months, my mom is now finally at peace. Mom, you are now reunited with your parents, Grandma B and Grandpa Carl. You are also with Papa Milt and Aunt Doreen and everyone else who has left us. Mom, I will see you again one day. Until then, please look after all of us, as you always have. I love you.
David.
I think Eric did a wonderful job expressing the brother's thoughts, so I'm going to keep this really short. My mother battled for 4 extremely difficult months with such courage and grace. I always just assumed she'd be out of the hospital soon and our family would resume normal life. On Friday, I was truly in shock and kept thinking I couldn't believe I would never see her again. After some reflection, I realized that wasn't the case. In fact, I'd see her every day. I'll see the values she passed on to Alan, Eric, and I reflected in our own children. I'll see her in my niece Hannah's love of family. I'll see her in my nephew Ben's compassion for others. I'll see her in my daughter Charlie's devotion to her friends. I'll see her in my daughter Hattie's huge personality. And I'll see her in my son Jax's kindness. The loss of my mother has left a hole, but the way she lived will continue to have a huge impact on our family's life now and for generations to come. My father has had a simple mantra over the last few days. She was the best. I think that sums my mother up perfectly.
And Hannah.
To tell you the truth, I had a hard time putting all Mimi's good traits into writing. No matter how hard I try, I can never do justice to what she overcame in her lifetime. Mimi made an impact on the world around her, spreading warmth and kindness everywhere she went. I'm sure we all have fond memories of my grandmother and her sweet smile, as there was no limit to her generosity. Mimi, you will forever be my best friend. You have been by my side for every step of my life so far. The hardest part will be doing the rest without you, but I know I will succeed due to the strength you have instilled in me. Whether we were baking banana bread, singing and dancing, or watching TV, a smile was always on our faces. It didn't matter what we were doing, as long as we were together, that was enough for us. I'll never forget watching Law & Order SVU with you, and like clockwork, Poppy would come in to clean the dishes. You would pause the TV, look over at him, and say, "Elle, shh." When I was 5 years old, Mimi told me all about her previous trips to New York. It was that day she decided my first trip to New York was going to be just her and I to celebrate my sweet 16. We talked about it every year, and finally that day came. I turned 16, we went to New York. Mimi got to show me all of her favorite spots, including restaurants, seeing shows, and shopping. We both knew this was a trip we would never forget. Poppy, you are the living testament to the beauty Mimi was. She radiates within you. Mimi always made sure before she ended any call to say, "Just remember to find someone who treats you just as amazing as your Poppy does to me." I love you, Mimi, with all my heart. Thank you for being you and for teaching me everything I know.
Elliot and Cyril and Alan and Eric and David, Marnie and Amy, Hannah, Ben, Charlie, Hattie, and Jax. And dear friends and family, there are no words for us this morning as we gather to remember our wife and our sister, our mother, our grandmother, our aunt, and our friend, Lois Israel. There's a tale that is told of a woman who every night before she went to bed had a glass of tea. And as she would have her glass of tea, she would take a cube of sugar and simply hold it in her hand. After years of watching this and wondering why, her granddaughter finally asked, "Mimi, if you want sugar with your tea, why not just put it in the glass? Surely holding it in the palm of your hand does no good." When she finished her last sip of tea that evening, the woman gave the cube of sugar to her granddaughter, who in turn immediately put it in her mouth. To the girl's astonishment, the cube of sugar had no taste. Years later, remembering her Mimi's life, that granddaughter would say, "A person who is good to the core holds sweetness in her hand." For all who knew her, who respected her, who loved her, from her husband to her children and grandchildren, to her sister, to her niece and nephews and friends, Lois held sweetness in her hand. She was not only good to her core, through her caring and concern, her laughter, and occasionally her tears, her learning, her teaching, her dancing, her friendship and compassion, she made life sweeter for all of us and all who knew her. Lois was born on February 16, 1947, to parents Bernice and Carl Kurtzman of blessed memory, and she grew up, as you heard, with her sister Cyril. She started dance classes at age 5, and she loved dance, and it was so natural for her, but she didn't want to miss watching the Mickey Mouse show that her friends would talk about at school, so she stopped formal dance lessons, but that didn't stop her from dancing throughout life. It was a passion. She acted and danced in troupes and directed and choreographed many performances. While she loved singing, acting, and dancing, the center of her life, as you all know, was you all, her family. Elliot, you met the love of your life 57 years ago, and you married 2 years later. As Eric mentioned, you were married for half a century. Throughout, you maybe had argued occasionally, but you never really fought. Your relationship was centered around love and mutual respect. And it's clear that these values permeated down to your sons and to your grandchildren as well. Even during these last few months, one of the few things, she didn't complain, but one of the few things that Lois continued to lament was that she couldn't go home and be in bed with you. Together you traveled, you created this amazing, loving family, and you were always there for each other. She loved going to Palm Springs and visiting Papa Milt, and she was even able to visit Israel 3 times, and I know that she would want us to be offering a prayer of peace and holding Israel close in our hearts in this moment. She also traveled with her singing group, and later in life, that group went to nursing homes so she could share that gift of music with those who were unable to leave. You took many cruises, and you were apparently such good dinner companions that someone even wrote a memoir and included you as being the best dinner companions they had ever had in their hundreds of cruises. Alan, Eric, and David, it's clear that you were close with your mother and that she was always incredibly supportive of you. Whether you were kids or as adults, she was always there to lend you wisdom and love. Eric, you played for us the last voicemail that she left on your phone, wishing you a happy birthday. You could hear the love and the joy in her voice, even though we knew that she was beginning to struggle. And she concluded with this phrase, "I love you to death." You all 3 know that you will feel her love for the rest of your lives. When Lois became a grandmother, of course, her love continued to grow and expand. Hannah, as you mentioned, you have this special relationship with her, being the oldest and living with her and your poppy. Your grandmother was your best friend, and I know that you are feeling a lot of loss today. And of course, Ben and Charlie and Hattie and Jax, your grandmother loved you all so much as well, and you continued to get to know her as you continued to grow, as she watched you with amazement grow into the young people who you are today. And she never missed a reason to call any of you or any of her friends as well. In addition to dancing, Lois's second passion was playing canasta, which I looked up yesterday as this rummy type game. And you knew that she was good at this game, and for those of you who have played with her, you knew how good she was at this game. But you mentioned that during COVID, you downloaded it to help her play online, and there she was, her name on the leaderboard of this online canasta. But this is who Lois was. She excelled at everything she put her mind to, but she was never arrogant. She just loved life and loved sharing joy with everybody. And as we heard, she had the best laugh, pure joy through her laughter. These last 4 months have been really hard for you as her family and all of us as her friends. Lois went into the hospital for a hip replacement and continued to have complications from COVID and other things until finally she died this past Friday, finally at peace and no longer in pain. But throughout her trips to the hospital or rehab, she never complained. In fact, even when she would wince in pain in front of a doctor or a nurse, she would apologize to them and say, "Don't worry, you're doing a great job. It's just me." Elliot, I know your family wanted me to share today how amazing you are and how devoted you have been to your wife over the last 57 years. You were always there to support her, and I know that you will continue to hold her close in your heart. If only all of us can feel that same sense of love as you had with your beloved after 57 years. And sadly, Lois's fight concluded this past Friday. And I know that we are grateful that she is at peace, but it feels as though you've been robbed, that this wasn't her time. And I know that all of us are still feeling a bit of shock that she's not sitting in this room with us today, laughing, singing, and dancing as we are here celebrating her life. Lois was the sugar in our tea. Whenever she was around us, life was simply sweeter, without the need for anything more. Everything that she gave us, especially her love, is of course irreplaceable. But I know that she would be happy sitting here looking out on this room of friends and family, knowing that you are here today and that you will continue to be here with each other as you continue to move forward. We say, Zichrona Levracha, may Lois Israel's memory forever be a blessing to us and to all who knew her. And together we say, Amen. We take one more moment of our own silent reflections. The poet writes, "When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that want to die. If you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved, and if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands and by letting go of children that need to be free. Remember, love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away." We rise now for our traditional prayer of morning, El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tacha Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim HaToharim, Kazor HaKira Masirim, Et Nishmat Leah Bat Bela, Shehalacha Le'olama, Bal HaRachamim, Yastireha Beseter Kenefav Le'olamim, V'yitzror B'yitzror HaChaim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'tanuach b'shalom hamishkava v'nomar Amen. The English is inside of your handout. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of your presence, among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament unto the soul of Lois Israel, who has gone unto eternity. Lord of mercy, bring her under the cover of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life, be God's possession, and may her repose be peace. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at Shalom Memorial Park, located at 1700 West Rand Road in Arlington Heights. Everyone is invited to EJ's following the interment through 6 p.m. That information is on the service folder, as well as memorial contributions to Congregation Sukkot Shalom or the Friends of the IDF. For those of you who are joining us via live stream, all that information can be found on the funeral home's website. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession to the cemetery, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, we will be providing a car in the back of the procession to hopefully keep other cars from entering the procession. Please use your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections, and please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving in a procession to the cemetery. At this time, I invite everyone to please rise and stand in place. And for the people that have been asked to serve as pallbearers, please come forward and stand next to Lois's casket as we escort her from the chapel. Then once she's in the hearse, everyone may return to your cars. Ladies and gentlemen, you may exit through the door up front.